My daughter-in-law swore in court that her son was my husband's, confessing to an affair to secure the inheritance. My husband confirmed it, proud of his virility. My son was devastated. I didn't argue. I just raised my finger, and my key witness walked in with an envelope. When the judge saw the DNA test, everything changed. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never imagined that at 63 years old, sitting in a sterile conference room surrounded by mahogany furniture and legal documents, I would watch my family tear itself apart with such calculated precision. The words still echo in my mind, even now. Sienna's voice, trembling with what I now know was perfectly rehearsed emotion, as she looked directly at the estate attorney and declared, "I had an affair with Malcolm. The baby is his." My son Wesley went completely white. I watched 32 years of life drain from his face in an instant. His hands, which had been resting confidently on the polished table, began to shake as he stared at his wife of 4 years. The woman he had trusted completely, the mother of what he believed was his 6-month-old son. "Sienna, what are you saying?" Wesley's voice cracked like a teenager's. He looked between his wife and his father, searching desperately for some sign that this was a cruel joke. But Malcolm, my husband of 40 years, didn't look shocked. He didn't look guilty. He looked proud. "Well," Malcolm said, leaning back in his leather chair with a satisfied smirk, "I guess my old equipment still works better than I thought." He actually chuckled. At 68 years old, he was preening like a peacock over supposedly impregnating his daughter-in-law. The estate attorney, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat uncomfortably. He had known our family for 15 years, had handled Malcolm's father's estate, and now ours. This clearly wasn't the routine inheritance meeting he had expected. "Mrs. Patterson?" he addressed Sienna formally. "Are you stating under oath that your son Jacob is the biological child of Malcolm Patterson, not Wesley Patterson?" Sienna nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that seemed to produce no actual tears. "I'm so sorry, Wesley. I never meant for it to happen. Your father and we grew close when you were working those long hours at the firm. He was there for me when you weren't. I watched this performance with a strange detachment, as if I were watching actors in a play. But this wasn't theater. This was my family, and the stakes were my late father-in-law's $12 million estate." Wesley stood up so abruptly, his chair toppled backward. "Dad, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't." He couldn't even finish the sentence. Malcolm shrugged with infuriating casualness. "Son, these things happen. Your wife is a beautiful woman. You were never around? What did you expect?" The sound Wesley made wasn't quite a sob, and wasn't quite a roar of anger. It was something primal, the sound of a man's world collapsing. He stumbled toward the door, but Sienna's voice stopped him. "Wesley, please. I know this is hard, but we need to think about Jacob's future. If he's Malcolm's son, he has a right to the inheritance." That was when the pieces clicked into place for me. The timing, the calculation, the way Sienna had been pushing for this meeting ever since Jacob was born. She wasn't confessing out of guilt or a sudden attack of conscience. She was making a play for money. Under the terms of my father-in-law's will, his estate would be divided equally among his male descendants. Malcolm, as his son, would receive half. Wesley, as his grandson, would receive the other half. But if Jacob was Malcolm's son instead of Wesley's son, then Jacob would be entitled to a share as well, which would be controlled by his mother until he reached 25. "I think," Mr. Harrison said carefully, "we need to pause this meeting until we can arrange for genetic testing to confirm paternity." "Of course," Sienna said quickly. "I understand completely. I couldn't let this go on any longer. Living with this secret was destroying me." Malcolm nodded approvingly. "Sienna's doing the right thing. The boy deserves to know who his real father is." I had remained silent through this entire exchange, but everyone in the room could feel my presence. Finally, Mr. Harrison turned to me. "Mrs. Patterson, do you have any questions about how we should proceed?" I looked at my husband, who was still basking in his imagined virility. I looked at my daughter-in-law, whose performance deserved an Academy Award. I looked at my son, who was gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Then I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile or a reassuring smile. It was the smile of someone who knows exactly what cards they're holding. "I think genetic testing is an excellent idea," I said quietly. "In fact, I insist on it." Sienna's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "Of course, Mother Patterson. I want the truth to come out." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice soft as silk. "So do I. More than you know." The meeting was scheduled to reconvene in 2 weeks, pending the DNA results. As we gathered our things to leave, Wesley approached me in the parking lot. His face was ravaged, his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't understand how this happened. I trusted her. I trusted him. How could they do this to me?" I reached up and straightened his tie, the same gesture I had made 1,000 times when he was a little boy getting ready for school. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people show us exactly who they are. We just have to be smart enough to see it." Wesley nodded, but I could tell he didn't understand what I meant. Not yet. As I drove home alone, Malcolm having left with Sienna to discuss the situation, I allowed myself a small smile. They thought they were so clever, so calculating. They had no idea that I had been watching, listening, and preparing for this moment for months. The DNA test would indeed reveal the truth, but it wouldn't be the truth they were expecting. 2 weeks felt like a lifetime, but I had waited much longer for justice before. The 2 weeks following that devastating meeting crawled by with excruciating slowness. But those 14 days gave me time to reflect on how we had arrived at this moment, and more importantly, how I had seen it coming long before anyone else. It started 8 months ago, when Sienna was 6 months pregnant. I remember the exact moment my suspicions began. We were having Sunday dinner at Malcolm and my house, as we did every week. Wesley was exhausted from pulling 60-hour weeks at his law firm, trying to make partner. Sienna sat beside him, one hand resting on her rounded belly, playing the perfect pregnant wife. "Wesley, honey, could you get me some more water?" she asked sweetly. "The baby's been so active today." Wesley immediately jumped up, eager to tend to his pregnant wife. While he was in the kitchen, Sienna turned to Malcolm with a smile that was different from the one she had just given Wesley. It was slower, more knowing. "Malcolm, I've been meaning to thank you for that advice about the nursery colors. You have such good taste." Malcolm preened under her attention. "Well, I do know what I like. Wesley's always been too practical, no imagination." I watched this exchange carefully. There was nothing overtly inappropriate about it, but something felt off. The way she looked at him just a beat too long. The way Malcolm's chest puffed out when she complimented him. Over the following weeks, I began to notice a pattern. Sienna would call Malcolm during the day when Wesley was at work. She would ask his opinion on baby names, nursery furniture, even what type of stroller to buy. She made him feel important, valued, like the patriarch making important family decisions. Malcolm ate it up. At 68, he had been feeling increasingly irrelevant. His own law practice had been winding down, and Wesley's career was surpassing his. Suddenly, here was this beautiful young woman treating him like he was still vital, still influential. "Sienna called me today," he would tell me proudly over dinner. "She wants my advice on cribs. Smart girl, knowing who to ask." I started paying closer attention during our family gatherings. Sienna would position herself so that Malcolm had the best view of her. She would laugh just a little too loudly at his jokes. She would find excuses to touch his arm when she spoke to him. But the most telling moment came 6 weeks before Jacob was born. Wesley had to work late on a Saturday, preparing for a big case. Sienna called me, sounding distressed. "Mother Patterson, I'm having some cramping. It's probably nothing, but Wesley's not answering his phone. Could someone drive me to the doctor just to be safe?" "Of course," I offered immediately. But when I arrived at their house, I found Malcolm's car already in the driveway. "Oh," Sienna said when she answered the door. "Malcolm got here first. He's been so worried about me." Malcolm appeared behind her, looking flustered. "Adrian, good, you're here. Sienna was scared, so I came right over." Something about the scene felt staged. Sienna didn't look scared or uncomfortable. She looked satisfied, like everything was going according to plan. At the doctor's office, I watched Malcolm hover over Sienna like an anxious father-to-be. He asked the doctor questions that should have come from Wesley. He held Sienna's hand during the examination, and when the doctor assured us that everything was fine, Malcolm's relief seemed disproportionate. "Thank goodness," he said, squeezing Sienna's hand. "I couldn't bear it if something happened to you or the baby." Sienna looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes. "You're so good to me, Malcolm. I don't know what I'd do without you." I said nothing during the drive home, but my mind was working furiously. This wasn't an affair in any traditional sense. This was manipulation, pure and simple. Sienna was making Malcolm feel like a hero, like a protector, like the most important man in her life. After Jacob was born, the pattern intensified. Sienna would call Malcolm for advice about feeding schedules, sleep routines, baby development. She made him feel like he was the expert,